Welcome to the congregation of Yahweh. We're gathered together today on the Sabbath in the presence of Yahweh and His Son Yeshua to worship Him in spirit and in truth. And the way we do that is when we come together in fellowship, one with another. We draw one from another the spirit that Yahweh gives us to receive His Word. We're preparing to keep the Feast of Tabernacles, which will begin on Monday, and we will be gathered together for about 8 days, 7 days of Tabernacles, and then the last great day. And during that time, we will receive Yahweh's blessing. We will receive the Word, and we're gathered together at the fountain of living waters. See, Yahweh and Yeshua is the fountain of living waters. And he used this expression in a scene in the scriptures in the book of John, chapter 4 and verse 1. And there's a lot that we can get out of it. John 4 and 1. So when the master knew that the Pharisees had heard that Yeshua made and immersed more taught ones than Yochanan, although Yeshua himself did not immerse, but his taught ones, he left Yehuda and went away again to Galilee. And he had come to pass through Shamaron. Now, Shamaron was an extension of Jerusalem in the house of Israel. It was basically where the 10 northern tribes resided after the split, and so it was still, in essence, a part of the kingdom of Israel. Verse 5. So he came to a city of Shemaron and that is called Shechem, near the piece of land that Jacob gave to his son Joseph. And this is an inheritance of Joseph, and of course, Israel had been carried away into captivity, and it remains to be seen in the future for us to come back to that. But the point that we're looking for here is the fountain. Yaakov's fountain was there. That fountain that Yahweh allowed Jacob to dig. And it says, so Yeshua, being wearied from the journey, was sitting thus at the fountain. And it was about the 6th hour, which is about high noon. And a woman of Shemaron came to draw water. And Yeshua said to her, give me to drink. For his taught ones had gone off into the city to buy food. The woman of Shemaron therefore said to him, how is it that you, being a Yehudite, ask a drink from me, a woman of Shemaron? For Yehudim do not associate with the Shemarites. And so this is a question that he is going to have to answer. Yeshua answered and said to her, if you knew the gift of Elohim, and who it is who says to you, give me to drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living waters. And see, this is one of the things that the people even today is still at odds with. They have access to the fountain of living waters, and they will not accept it. They read the book and inject traditions of men and misinterpret, and they lose out. But if they just knew that what he was saying, in essence, in commandment keeping. See, the world says we don't have to keep the commandments anymore because they were too hard, and he knew it, and he knew we couldn't keep them. So he sent Jesus into the world, and his commandments are no longer effect. But that's not so. That is one of those false interpretations that people get in false worship. They need to be looking at this as the fountain of living waters, and it is commandment keeping. And then to highlight the commandment keeping is we keep the feasts of Yahweh. And see, we also have to understand that these are not the feast of the Jews. They're not even the feast of Israel. They're not the feast of any one person or one group of people or one nation. They are the feasts of Yahweh. And when we attend these feasts, we are coming to the fountain of living water. And the feasts are a pattern of his salvation. And when we keep them from the beginning of the year in the Feast of Matzah, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, and it begins with the sacrificial offering of Yeshua. He actually died on the day that they slayed the lambs for the sacrificial offering. So he came to be the blood sacrifice to cover the sins that the generations have. And we are delivered from those sins, and because we know what Yahweh has done for us. When we keep the feast, we exercise that faith. We exercise that belief. We share fellowship one with another. We help each other. And many people are blessed when they come to the understanding of feast keeping. And when we don't, in the book of Jeremiah, chapter 2 and verse 13, he says, "For my people have done two evils. They have forsaken me, the fountain of living waters." Now, see, that sounds familiar with the world today. The people think they know about him. They would like to know about him, but they don't follow his commandment. He says, to hew out for themselves cisterns, cracked cisterns. That means that they won't hold water, which do not hold water. And says, yes, let's see, is Israel a servant? Was he born in the house? Why is he given to plunder? See, Israel walked away from the house. Israel is the one that walked away from the blessings of Yahweh by sin. And that puts us in the same position today. We if we're not following after the Yahweh's commandments, then we're just like Israel was in the captivity. And it says that the young lions roared at him, they growled, and they made his land waste. His cities have been burned without inhabitant. And see, one of the things that is hard for people to understand is that this word that we're reading here in the book of Jeremiah, and matter of fact all the books, but specifically the prophets, are not the words of the scribes or the prophets. The prophets are simple servants. They're simple scribes. The context of what we read here is what they have written that the Master has said. And Yahweh is speaking the words in the first person to this generation. If we can understand that, then Yahweh is speaking to us. When Yahweh commands us to keep His commandment, when He says, in simple terms, remember the Sabbath day and keep it set apart, keep it holy. One rendition is guard my Sabbaths, guard my commandment. Then we understand that we have the obligation to listen to Yahweh. We drink from that fountain of living waters when we listen to Yahweh. Do not follow after tradition. Do not follow after what somebody believes, somebody's interpretation. Go directly to Yahweh Himself and listen to Him speak to you when you read these words. He condemns us for walking away, but He rejoices with us when we come back. In Jeremiah 17 and 13, O Yahweh, the expectation of Israel, all who forsake you are put to shame. Those who depart from me shall be written in the earth, because they have forsaken Yahweh, the fountain of living waters. And that's a tragedy, and that's one that Yahweh will have to correct. We have to put ourselves in the position that Yahweh would call us back to this fountain. He says in Jeremiah 17 and 14, heal me, O Yahweh, so that I am healed. Save me, so that I am saved. For you are my praise. And that is the understanding and the attitude that we have to have in this generation to receive the blessing from Yahweh. Verse 15, see, they say to me, where is the word of Yahweh? Let it come now. See, you've heard cliches where people say, well, if He's real, why don't He do this? If He said that, why don't He accomplish that? He is accomplishing it, but He is working it out in His due time. In Zechariah chapter 14 and verse 8, and in that day it shall be that living waters flow from Jerusalem. He is speaking of a time that the waters is going to come back and flow from the Jerusalem. And in this present time, when He's calling His servants back to Him, and they are hearing and coming together and studying and keeping His Sabbaths and keeping His feasts, then we understand what commandment keeping is all about. It's not the burden that people claim it to be. It's not the hardship. Yahweh never gave a commandment to hard time His people. The commandment is to relieve us from the burden of sin. And that's the reason we need to turn back. And He said about concerning the water, living waters that's flowing from Jerusalem, He says, half of them toward the eastern sea, and half of them toward the western sea. And if you can imagine on the map where Jerusalem sits and the throne of Yahweh being established in Jerusalem, and the scripture says that the fountain will flow up from under the throne, and it will go to the former sea and go to the hinder sea. We're talking about the Sea of Galilee and the Sea of Mediterranean. And that will turn with living waters, and living waters is not a spiritual situation when it's in function. It is life-giving water, just like we have today, that's flowing through the rivers, keeping life on this earth. If we did not have life in the streams and the creeks and the rivers and the water sources of this earth, this would be a dead planet. But it's a life-giving planet. And Yahweh is using this to bring life to His people. He said, in summer as well as in winter. Verse 9, and Yahweh shall be sovereign over all the earth. See, that is the key that we need to understand. Yahweh can be your sovereign now, but eventually He's going to be the sovereign of the whole earth. Everybody is going to come under the auspices of His rule. He says, in that day there shall be Yahweh and His name one. Yahweh, His name one. That comes from the Hebrew word echad. And some people like to use that as trying to divide two, Yahweh, Yeshua and Yahweh as one, or they say, well, that's two, how can it be one? Well, the word echad means more than just the numeral one. It means first. It means head, front, always, established. He says in John chapter 7 and verse 37, and on the last day of the great feast of the festival, and see, we notice that Yeshua attended the festivals. And you can track them through the Scripture, and you see that he did go to every one of them. But in this one, I believe it might be the one we're approaching and preparing for today. It's because this is the important one. It's the feast of the prosperity of Yahweh's people, because it's the ingathering of all the fruits and all the wealth and stuff to be shared. And so he says, and Yeshua stood up and cried out, saying, if anyone thirsts, let him come unto me, and let him be who believes in me drink. See, he is calling us to believe. He's calling us to come unto him, and he's calling us to drink. And when we do that, we receive the spiritual blessing of what he is giving us. It's more than just a religion. It's more than just a set of rules that you go by. It is more than that. It is a personal relationship with our Creator. And he says, as the Scripture said, out of his innermost shall flow the rivers of living water. And see, when we get this understanding that he's given us, and we fellowship one with another, and we attend these Sabbath days, and we attend these feasts, we have that experience of the living waters flowing out of our innermost being. What we have learned and what we've experienced and what we have drank and taken in is a manifestation of Yahweh's love and an experience with him. In John chapter 7:39, and this he said concerning the Spirit, which those believing in him were about to receive. See, he has performed the Spirit to guide the people who receive it. And we need to understand that. He says, for the set-apart Spirit was not yet given. At that time it was not given to him, but after we experienced it, it is available today. Because Yeshua was not yet esteemed. And when we come along after his death, burial, and resurrection, we understand how he was esteemed. In John 4, in chapter 11, the woman said to him, Master, you have no vessel. Well, here's a fellow that's sitting at a well, and it has nothing to move the water with. And the well is deep. From where then do you have living waters? See, it was a mystery to her, and it's a mystery today to most people. But it is time for us to understand where it comes from and begin to receive it. Verse 12. Are you greater than our father Yaakov, who gave us the well and drank from it himself, and his sons and his cattle? See, she understood that Father Jacob dug the well. She understood a little bit of the history. And now here he is talking about something that is beyond the normal imagination. and wants to know. So the verse 13, he says, Yeshua answered and said to her, everyone drinking of this water shall thirst again. When we drink of the water that we have to sustain life with, we thirst again, or we wouldn't need to drink anymore. We continually drink water. And so he says, but whoever drinks of the water I give him shall certainly never thirst. What we have learned by coming to Yahweh and experiencing His truth and His understanding and learning to keep His feast, learning to keep His commandments and walk in the way, we will not thirst from that. He says, and the water that I give him shall become in him a fountain of water springing up unto everlasting life. See, when we get the experience that we need, we have that unction, the Spirit manifesting itself in our being, and we're not thirsty for that water. But we are desirous to continue to serve Him. The woman said to him, Master, give me this water, so that I do not thirst, nor come here to draw. And Yeshua said to her, go call your husband and come here. Now he gave her a little test. We're still going through some small tests. The woman answered and said, I have no husband. Yeshua said to her, you have said, well said, I have no husband, for you have had 5 husbands. In other words, the human race has had a great chance for sin. They've had the experience. And the one whom you now have is not your husband. What you have said is true. The woman said to him, Master, I see that you are a prophet. He's beginning to get her attention. It would be nice if Yahweh could get the attention of this generation. And He might be going to do that shortly. There's a lot of things going on that it could be quicker than most people think. He says, for our fathers worshiped on this mountain. In other words, our fathers attended to religion. But you people, talking about Him, say that in Jerusalem is the place where one needs to worship. We do have to have a central place or force to worship. But He says, Yeshua said to her, woman, believe me, the hour is coming, for you shall neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem worship the Father. See, and it was after His death, burial, and resurrection, we did not have to go to Jerusalem. We did not even have to look to the east to do our prayers. We did not have to make any formal sacrament or anything for our prayers to be answered. But He says, you worship what you do not know. We worship what we know, because the deliverance is of the Yehudim, the promise of Yahweh to Jacob is what we are to worship. In Psalms 147, verse 19, declaring His word to Yaakov, His laws and His right rulings to Israel. See, Yahweh never did away with His laws. If you want to use the term law, it's Torah in Hebrew, and it means right ruling. It does not mean what most people think it means as a constitutional law in a traffic court or in a criminal court or in a federal court. It is right rulings. It is the right way to live. In Psalm 147:20, He has not done so with any nation, and they have not known His right ruling. Praise Yah. At the time that He was speaking these words through David to the people, He had not yet accomplished. But in Isaiah chapter 2 and verse 3, and many people shall come and say, Come and let us go up to the mountain of Yahweh, to the house of the Elohim of Yaakov, and let him teach us his ways. See, when we come to this services, as feeble as they may be in the eyes of the world, Yahweh is using this to teach his people. And we don't just learn from somebody getting up here and preaching a sermon and that's it and let's go home. We get it from fellowship and worship, questions, study, comparison of the scriptures. He says, and let us walk in his paths. See, we are encouraged to follow those commandments. That if you can think about the commandments as a road to walk, and you walk on that road, you won't be off track. That's what he's talking about. For out of Zion comes forth the Torah, and the word of Yahweh from Jerusalem. And Isaiah 2:4, and he shall judge between the nations. Yahweh is going to judge the nations, but he's not going to do it like the world thinks judgment is. The average person thinks judgment means condemnation, and that he is going to condemn them, and everybody has sinned enough that we all need condemnation as far as that goes. But Yahweh is going to judge between the nations, and that means he's going to direct them through right ruling. And the right ruling is the Ten Commandments, and the right ruling is scriptures that teach us the pattern of salvation through feast keeping. He says, and shall reprove many people. See, when we come together, it's an opportunity for Yahweh to reprove us. And they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. And that would be a good thing for this generation to do right now. We got too many swords in operation, and we're not farming the land correctly. And we're not utilizing the resources of the land correctly. But one day Yahweh will fulfill that. He says, nation shall not lift up sword against nation. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we had no war going on in the world today? But we've got more wars going on now than we had in the Second World War. And with modern equipment and modern warfare, we have the potential to doing great damage. Neither teach battle anymore. See, we won't have to sit through seminars and learn strategies of battle and how we're going to defeat our enemies, because we'll be fellowshipping with one another. He said, O house of Yaakov. Now he's pleading with Yaakov. This is Yahweh's speech, speaking directly through the book of Isaiah, speaking to this generation. O house of Yaakov, come and let us walk in the light of Yahweh. And see, Israel is the forerunner of that scenario. Yahweh called Israel to be the one to garner and rule the world in right ruling under the auspice of Yahweh, not in man-made government. But see, most people don't know what Israel is in the first place, or they don't know the definition of his name, and they have lost track through sin of his mission. But the word itself in Hebrew means Israel, means he shall rule as El. That means he's a prince. A prince is one that is responsible for the betterment and the fellowship of the world. A prince is not privileged. Man-made governments have privileged rulers. And we see the disaster that has made, if you studied history at all, It's been from generation to generation since the beginning of time that people have dominated the other people in servitude and become privileged. But Yahweh wants princes to be responsible and obey the mission of their father. Their father is Abraham. Yahweh made a special effort to change Abram's name to Abraham, and then he gave the definition right there in the course when he was giving it. The definition of the name Abraham is, "You shall be the father of many nations." What responsibility is a father? It's to keep care of the household, for the welfare, the benefit, provide, finance, guide, direct, teach. Everything is supposed to be in righteousness. That's what Abraham's name means. Israel inherited the blessing after Abraham, so therefore he is supposed to be a prince. And that's what Yahweh is looking for us to walk in the light as he is in the light. And that's what we learn when we come together in fellowship and simple Sabbath days, and especially during the the week feast days. We have more time to fellowship one with another and share, and everybody can share. Yahweh is a spirit that can manifest himself in everybody. In Isaiah chapter 14, verse 1, because Yahweh has compassion on Yaakov and shall again choose Israel. See, he is talking about Israel after the fact that he has been in captivity and dispersed all these years. He's now coming back into the fruition of his ministry. And this is Yahweh in the first person speaking this. This is not an abstract idea from somewhere in the world. He says, and give them rest in their own land. Yahweh is going to give rest for Israel. And everybody that Israel influences is going to have rest too. He says, and the strangers shall join them. See, it's good for the strangers, and that would mean foreigners, that would take on the righteousness of Israel and use Israel as the guide and fellowship and progress and let Yahweh work in their lives. He says, and they shall cling to the house of Yaakov. These foreign nations are coming together in one day and cling to Yahweh. They're going to look over the idea that Israel is a physical nation and look that Israel is a spiritual movement to come close to Yahweh. Isaiah chapter 56, verse 6, he says, also the sons of the foreigner who join themselves to Yahweh, to serve him, and to love the name. See, think about that. Most people read over that. But you got to love the name that you can understand before you can love the one you can't see. The name of Yahweh to his servants, all who guard the Sabbath. So we found out right here who the servants of Yahweh are. They're the ones that guard the Sabbath. They're not the ones that's elevated in fine clothes and position and authority. They're the ones that simply guard the Sabbath and not profane it, and hold fast to my covenant. You see the mission that we have at this time? It's simple. Matter of fact, it's so simple till we overlook it. Oh, that's like telling a kid that's fixing to graduate in high school to go back to kindergarten. But it's that simple. But it's that important because we need to hold fast to the covenant. He says, them I shall bring to my set-apart mountain. Yahweh is going to set these people in a metaphoric mountain of government that is going to be the righteous rule of Yahweh. He says, and let them rejoice in my house of prayer. It should be a rejoicing in the house of prayer. And I'm talking about the house as the people, not the building, but the people. Collectively, that are Yahweh's people are called the house of prayer. He says, their burnt offerings and their slaughterings are accepted on my altar, for my house is called the house of prayer for all the peoples. Yahweh is putting it together for it to be all the peoples, not just one special right. That our pedigree is not going to be the criteria that he's going to set this up with. He is going to do it because he calls us to the house of prayer. He said, the Master Yahweh, who gathers the outcasts of Israel, declares. And he is gathering the house of Israel wherever they have been scattered since they left Jerusalem, or left Israel. He says, I gather still others to him besides those who are gathered to him. Others. Now, there's not a nation left out, not a tribe left out. They're gathered to him. In Ezekiel chapter 47 and verse 22, and it shall be that you divide it by lot as an inheritance for yourselves. Israel and the nations are coming back to receive the inheritance that Yahweh has provided. And for the strangers who sojourn in your midst and who bear children among you, and they shall be to you as native born among the children of Israel. Now, most people can't imagine that. We've had enough of experience of race mingling and mixing, so we should understand it, but we don't. As a human being, we have to have a spiritual understanding that the promise of Yahweh is going to accomplish it. He says, with you they have an inheritance in the midst of the tribes of Israel. Now, Yahweh is saying to Israel, collectively, wherever they are, you have this inheritance. And this inheritance is among the tribes of Israel. He says in verse 23, and it shall be that in whatever tribe the stranger sojourns, whatever tribe. And see, there's 13 tribes of Israel. And a lot of people forget how that came to be and how it was divided. But the house of Joseph became 2 full tribes. And that brought the warrior tribes back to 12. Because Levi was the priest tribe chosen out of the 12. And he did his job as tending the tabernacle and taking care of the spiritual needs. But whatever tribe the stranger sojourns, there you give him his inheritance. In other words, these foreigners, they will get their inheritance, but not from a physical standpoint and not from a governmental standpoint of a confused nation. It will not work with the human mind. Zechariah chapter 2 and verse 10. Sing and rejoice, O daughter of Zion, for look, I am coming and shall dwell in your midst, declares Yahweh. We are looking, desiring for him to hurry up, to come and accomplish this. He says, and many Gentiles shall join to Yahweh in that day, and they shall become my people, and I shall dwell in your midst, and you shall know that Yahweh of hosts has sent me to you. See, Gentiles simply means nations. It don't mean the elaborate description that most people have tacked onto it over the years. It comes from the Hebrew word go'i, and go'i, singular, is nation. Plural is go'im, is nations. So therefore, we know the root word, where it comes from, and how he can accomplish what he said he would do. And I'll repeat this last sentence. He says, "And you shall know that Yahweh of hosts has sent me to you." When we read this word and we hear it, when this word speaks to us till it is embedded into our minds and in our hearts, and we receive it as instruction, then we know that he was sent to us. In Zechariah 8:2, "Thus said Yahweh of hosts, in those days 10 men from all languages of the nations take hold. Yea, they shall take hold of the edge of the garment of a man of a Yehudite, saying, Let us go with you, for we have heard that Elohim is with you." See, there is coming a time when people are going to be desirous to find out what these people have been studying all these years. Instead of condemning them for being religious, they need to thank them for being studious and study the Word and keep the Word alive in among the families of the world. In John chapter 4 and verse 23, continuing of the waters, the fountain of living waters. "But the hour is coming, and now is, when the true worshipers shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth. For the Father also does seek such to worship him." And see, that is simple, but it is beautiful poetic language that Yahweh is giving us an invitation as a nation, not just a few people who think they're religious and divide themselves up in groups. That's not what he's talking about. He's talking about the entire population. He is desirous to have it work. Elohim is spirit, and those who worship him need to worship in spirit and truth. See, it's that simple, how the spirit to lean toward him and then follow him in truth. What he says in this scripture is truth. The woman said to him, "I know that Messiah is coming." In other words, she had already read in the books. She might have had attended some synagogue, or she might have just listened to a scribe talk or something. But she knew that it's supposed to be. And you can talk to people today and they say, "Well, we know the end of the world is about to come." Whether they believe Yahweh or not, or whether they understand, but they have this sense about them. He says, "The one who is called anointed, when that one comes, he shall announce to us all." See, when he comes, he's going to announce. That's the attitude. Verse 26, Yeshua said to her, "I who am speaking to you am he." He says, "I am the one that's going to accomplish this. I am going to announce it to the world." And when we read this and we hear it, now that's another thing. See, a lot of people read the scripture and they can memorize it, but they don't hear it because they don't do what it says. They don't follow it, and it don't become part of their being. But when we understand it as part of our being, then we can see that he is the one that was speaking to us. He says, "And upon this his taught ones came, and they were marveling that he was speaking with a woman. However, no one said, 'What do you seek?' or 'Why do you speak with her?' The woman then left the water jug and went away to the city and said to the men, 'Come, see, a man who told me all that I have done. Is this not the Messiah?" The one that has the Spirit of Yahweh in him to where he can speak the promises that Yahweh did. Is he the Messiah? They went away. No, they went out of the city and were coming to him. But in the meantime, his taught ones were asking him, "Rabbi, eat." See, said, they went and got him some food. He said, eat now. And he said to them, and this is the key, he said to them, I have food to eat, which you do not know. Then the taught one said each to the other, did anyone bring him food to eat? And Yeshua said to them, my food is to do the desire of him who sent me and to accomplish his work. And we are to take on that same mission when we understand it. Do not say there is still 4 months and the harvest comes. In other words, don't put off the idea that the harvest is still further off out there. He said, see, I say to you, lift up your eyes and see the fields, for they are white with harvest already. We can look around and see that the fields are already for harvest. He says, and he who is reaping receives a reward, the gatherers and gathers fruit for everlasting life, so that both he who is sowing and he who is reaping rejoice together. For in this the word is true, one sows and another reaps. I sent you to reap that for which you have not labored. Others have labored, and you have entered into their labors. And many of the Shomerites of that city believed in him because of the word of the woman and who witnessed, he told me all that I have done. Therefore, when the Shomerites came to him, they were asking him and to stay with them, and he stayed there 2 days. And many more believed because of his word. And they said to the woman, we no longer believe because of what you said, for we ourselves have heard that, and we know that this is truly the Messiah, for the Savior of the world. And after the 2 days, he left there and went to Galilee. For Yeshua himself witnessed that a prophet is without appreciation in his own country. Therefore, when he came to Galilee, the Galileans received him, having seen all that he had done in Jerusalem at the festival, for they also went to the festival. So we see that Yahweh is sending the message to the world today. And when they hear it, when they read it and understand it, and it begins to speak to them, we'll see the fulfillment. We'll see that Yeshua is ready to accomplish the work and the will of the Father. And I think we're going to be in the generation to see him fulfill it. May Yahweh bless and keep you.